Hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Oliver, and I am the head of Archives and Special Collections at the Laurier Library. Thank you so much for joining us today for the 2024 Climate Action Week panel. We would like to acknowledge that Wilfrid University and its campuses are located on the shared traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. This land is part of the Dish with One Spoon Treaty. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. Acknowledging them reminds us of our important connection to the land where we live, learn, and work. We recognize, honor, and respect these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and waters on which Laurier is now present. And we encourage you to consider the traditional lands you are joining us from today. This event is a collaboration between the Laurier Library Sustainability Office and the WLUFA Climate Action Committee to celebrate the Ontario Library Association and the BC Library Association's Climate Action Week. The goal of this week is to focus on the climate change-related challenges and emergencies facing our communities and to demonstrate that libraries are places to connect people and resources on climate change. I'd like to go over a few Zoom housekeeping items. You are muted and your video is turned off. We invite you to sit back and enjoy the panel. Captions are enabled for this webinar. If you would benefit from captions, please click on the button with the CC icon along the bottom of your screen to enable this feature. We will be utilizing the Q&A function today. So to ask a question, please click on the Q&A button along the bottom of your screen. And we'll be taking questions at the end of the panel, so please feel free to add your questions as they come to you. I'd like to now introduce our moderator for today's panel, Eric. Eric is the manager of the Sustainability Office at Wilfrid University and the moderator for today's panel. So please join me in welcoming him.
Thank you for the opportunity to share Climate Action Week with our Laurier community and people external to that. We wanted to welcome our three guest speakers today from our Laurier community. We're going to ask each of our speakers to introduce themselves. Amanda's going to put in their bio in the chat for your reference. And then at the end of the presentation, we're challenging our audience to think of questions. I got 9 questions right now set aside, 2 for each, 1 for Amanda. But ideally, we want you to ask these questions. So if I don't get to any of my questions, that'd be a great kind of result. I wanted to be able to move forward with that, and hopefully you'll enjoy this discussion. We're going to start with Suma.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Suma Abid. I'm Energy Manager with Facilities and Asset Management. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda and Eric. I will be sharing our initiatives to enhance energy efficiency and reduce Laurier's carbon footprint. To start, I'll share a little bit about my work. As Energy Manager at Laurier, my role is crucial to advancing sustainability efforts on all campuses. By implementing energy efficiency initiatives, optimizing energy use, and promoting renewable resources, we can reduce our collective carbon footprint. Utility monitoring, budgeting, forecasting are all mandatory components of our energy portfolio, and we use various programs such as RETScreen and Energy Star Portfolio Manager to establish trends and streamline our reporting processes to ensure accuracy. Water conservation initiatives and energy efficiency projects are a continuous effort at Laurier. A few examples include our Laurier Energy Efficiency Program, or LEAP, which was a multi-phase project to improve energy efficiency for Laurier's building and transform our building portfolio towards sustainability. This $50 million project included the installation of rooftop solar panels, battery storage, and a microgrid. LEAP has involved the implementation of energy conservation measures across all of Laurier campuses, Some of our measurable progress includes upgrading over 15,000 conventional lights to LEDs, installing 1,300 low-flow water fixtures across both campuses, and 6 megawatts of battery storage was installed and operational as of 2020. In partnership with the Sustainability Office, we are developing our Energy Conservation and Demand Management Report, as well as our Carbon Reduction Roadmap Update, which are both publishing this fall. Our ongoing effort to improve sustainable efforts on campus through Energy Management Working Group and the Strategic Energy Management Program through the IESO. And we are bridging departmental gaps through FAM partnerships. GG261 was a Powering Earth course in winter 2023. This course provided a capstone capacity for 50 students seeking access to real-world industry experience in the renewable energy sector. I'm also a member of the Ontario Association of Physical Plant Administrators, OAPA, and the Ontario College and University Professionals, OCUSP, both organizations sharing their best practices and promoting higher standards for Ontario institutions. As part of our utility management portfolio, I submit data sets and reports as needed to individuals throughout the organization, both institutional and not. I collaborate with several departments in this way, and that's exactly how we met Amanda and decided to pursue this carbon footprint pilot for archives and special collections. So presently, Canadian archives are at risk for climate change threats. Archives and Special Collections developed a feasibility report to present current practices around disaster planning, sustainability, and climate adaptation. This was developed to provide recommended next steps for record managers and archivists adapting to climate change. Findings from this report surrounded climate adaptation strategies, included the investment in the design and space optimization of housing records and the importance of resilient buildings. There's also a need for training on disaster planning, engaging senior leadership and administrators on climate change, and developing the regional strategies. Preparing for and mitigating the impact of climate change on facilities and archives needs to become a priority. In addition to improving resiliency, preserving material will continue to experience a rising cost and may require historic building retrofits, such as securing the building envelope, windows, interior insulations to combat these rising costs, and increasing the energy usage. As funding becomes available, we would like to pursue alternative energy sources to reduce the load on the archival facilities. The total appraised value for archives is $1.5 million. There's a separate disaster recovery procedure in place for archives and special collections from the rest of the university because a majority of the holdings are irreplaceable if damaged. For example, there is a fire suppression system in place that removes oxygen rather than starting the sprinklers. With this information in mind, we wanted to build awareness and present a carbon footprint for these smaller archival spaces in order to recommend next steps for our partners and institutions adapting to climate change. So the carbon footprint is a measure of the amount of carbon dioxide and other carbon compounds emitted due to the consumption of fossil fuels by any particular group. As a pilot project, I used both historical data to calculate current trends and past trends in kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions produced by natural gas and electricity while forecasting future energy usage. This impacts our campus scope 1 and 2 emissions. So scope 1 would be direct emissions that are owned and controlled by a company, such as natural gas. Scope 2 is the indirect emissions that a company would cause that comes from energy it purchases, such as electricity. And scope 3 are emissions that are not covered under the scope 1 and 2 heading, but are created by a company's value chain, example, air travel. So I'm going to walk through the process that we use to develop this methodology. Here's a brief overview of our framework that we developed to calculate the carbon footprint for individual spaces at Laurier. So archives and special collections are securely stored on the first floor of the library. One room has a separate HVAC unit for optimal climate year-round. There is additional permanent space at 232 King, as you see in the photos. Previously, I visited this facility, and it was dark, damp, and it seemed unsuitable for storing valuable archives. Last summer, a major retrofit was done to make sure that this would become a safe space to store Laurier's collection. There is now proper shelving, storage for mixed artifacts, and workspaces for staff. Appropriate lighting and temperature settings were also established, and a dehumidifier was added to ensure that the temperature range is suitable to keep all archives. I'm very pleased to see this colorful space. Thanks for the tour, Amanda. The most important component of data collection is having access to the reliable historical data. Luckily, the period that we selected for this project aligns with our other reporting initiatives. Though COVID-19 fell right in between the selected period, this specific space was not impacted by COVID closures. When continuing the study, we will definitely come across several buildings that were directly impacted, in which case it's helpful to see the utilities impact on the campus buildings with minimal occupancy. This allows us to benchmark the lowest point of energy usage. To establish parameters, it's beneficial to collaborate with department heads and to understand events that may have taken place during this time frame. These could be electrical and mechanical upgrades or natural disasters that may have caused a fluctuation in the energy consumption or cost of operating these spaces. Generally, when we're reporting on our carbon footprint, it's on a campus-wide study that includes Scope 1, 2, and a portion of Scope 3 emissions. What makes this pilot unique was our deep dive to understand these smaller spaces within the larger building footprint. Each of these spaces vary in functionality, which directly impacts its carbon footprint. When we focus on specific spaces, such as archives and special collections, we can provide specialized solutions to address climate change concern and adopt resiliency and adaptive standards that can be carried throughout Laurier's campuses. Once energy data is collected, we must determine the usage during the required time frame in order to calculate the carbon footprint. The greenhouse gas emissions are calculated using coefficient factors, global warming potential, or GWP, which is an index to measure how much infrared thermal radiation greenhouse gases would absorb over a given amount of time. All greenhouse gases are not equal. The global warming potential metric examines greenhouse gases' ability to trap heat into the atmosphere compared to carbon dioxide. So based on the graph you see here, we've determined that the annual changes in carbon dioxide equivalent emissions for natural gas and electricity. Electricity in orange looks consistent. Annual approximate is 560 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions annually. Natural gas is in blue. It shows a decline from 2021 to 2023. This was most likely due to the consolidation of mechanical equipment and how the library was receiving heat. The reduction that you see here is a result of this work. The reduction at 232 King has to do with the reduced occupant loading. Since COVID, we haven't seen the same utilization of these spaces. So to conclude, some points to consider. The amount of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions for these small spaces varies based on several factors. The size of archives, larger archival material would require more energy for climate control. Temperature lighting standards affect energy usage and greenhouse gas emissions. Energy sources used like fossil fuel or electricity from renewables is solar an option. Common practices, including frequency and access to spaces, storage conditions. In tangible terms, the current carbon dioxide equivalent values are comparable to driving an average gas vehicle for 14,000 kilometers annually. Moving forward, we would like to enhance training opportunities, engage senior leadership on climate change, develop regional strategies, utilize funding opportunities, try installing LED lighting retrofits or occupancy sensors, proper insulation. Regular maintenance would be a great option. Implement regular maintenance schedule for all systems and equipment to ensure that they operate at peak efficiency. Mitigating the impact of climate change on our campuses must become a priority. By integrating energy efficient technologies and best practices, institutions can reduce their environmental footprint and potentially lower the operating cost while preserving valuable archival material. Using a similar methodology for other buildings on campus, we will specify actions that should be taken relative to these spaces to help us to prepare more efficiently for disaster planning, climate adaptation, and a more sustainable future. Thank you for the opportunity to share the amazing projects that I've been involved with over the last few years. I will continue to work towards energy efficiency on all campuses and building strong relationships with the Laurier community. You can scan the QR code to access the energy management page within Laurier, or visit Laurier Connect page for more information about the energy management program. Thank you.
Thanks, Suma. That was very informative in terms of a collaborative pilot that I know you and I are working on with our office and your program. While we set up Carla's presentation, I do want to encourage the fact that that pilot is actually being shared within our Ontario community of other institutions. We're trying to encourage other institutions to partake in that. I know we've recruited 2 other ones in Ontario already that want to participate. So we're excited to see what additional data we can gain from sharing this pilot externally. We'll move things on to Carla now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carla Johnston. I'm a PhD candidate at the Balsillie School of International Affairs, and I'm also part of the Northern Sustainable Food Systems Research Group here at Laurier. And I am looking forward to talking with you today about the climate change adaptation research I've been doing with Coggy-2 First Nation and Samba-K First Nation. So just to give a bit of context to get this started, the research that I have done and that I'm going to be discussing today is the product of long-term relationships with Samba-K First Nation and Coggy-2 First Nation through the Northern Sustainable Food Systems Research Group. The research had been taking place long before I started my PhD and will take place long after I finish it. So it's this long-term relationship that includes multiple people in that research group. And in this research group, we use participatory action research, and there are a few principles that we follow. So first, we actually take time to build relationships, and we make sure that the research is driven by community-defined goals. Our community partners are seen as experts and collaborators in the knowledge production process, and we work alongside each other to take action based on what we have learned together. And I really like this picture because I feel like it kind of embodies all 4 aspects of this. This is me learning how to take in fish from a net from a community member in Kikisa from Coggy-2 First Nation. In this picture, the community member is very much the expert. He was teaching me lots of things. We're working alongside each other, and we're working on something that's really important to this community member, and it was very much an opportunity to build relationship and bond. And so this approach helped to create one of the research questions for my PhD, and that is, how can Samba-K First Nation and Coggy-2 First Nation connect with global food governance processes to support their self-defined goals for their local food system? I'm only going to refer to the global governance aspects of the research just a little bit and focus more on the local work. So let's get into that. So here's a map to situate ourselves. So Samba-K First Nation and Coggy-2 First Nation have their home communities in the Northwest Territories, Canada. And you can see where they are on the map here, closer to the BC and Alberta border. So how this research all got started was in 2020, right before the pandemic started. We held a 3-day workshop in Kikisa to create climate change adaptation plans for both Coggy-2 First Nation and Samba-K First Nation. And in the room, there were researchers, government representatives, and community members. And we got to discuss relevant research, local knowledge, and government programs related to climate change and its effects on their lands. The North is warming at 4 times the global average. And so the changes that these communities are seeing due to climate change are rapid, and they are making significant effects on their local food systems. And so at this workshop, based on the knowledge exchange, both Samba-K First Nation and Coggy-2 First Nation were able to define their own goals to how they wanted to adapt to climate change. And one of these goals was that they wanted to continue to learn and improve on growing their own food in ecologically sustainable ways. Hunting, trapping, fishing, and gathering are what has sustained these communities for millennia. And this is still a really important part of their food system. They just want to add gardening in and use it as a way to adapt to the changing climate and be able to continue to sustain themselves off of their lands. But it is still something new for them. And so they have requested support in making it a success in their community. So the pandemic definitely changed the course of this research quite a bit, but eventually we were able to do some virtual conversations with both communities to introduce and discuss the framework of agroecology to help support their goals of growing local food. Agroecology is a holistic framework for food systems that seeks ecological, economic, social, and political sustainability, as well as it values traditional knowledge. Many of the resources that we shared about agroecology actually came from a policy process at the UN Committee on World Food Security about agroecology. And so this was one of the ways that we connected to global governance to support local goals. Our community partners were really enthusiastic about agroecology as they saw it as similar to the holistic nature of their own way of life. In one of the conversations, one of our partners said, "You're doing what we want you to do. You are bringing our way of doing things into it." So together, we worked to contextualize the global agroecology frameworks into something that fit the needs and goals of both communities. And we published the results of that work in the publication that you can see on the screen. So now to dive into some of the casework that I did with each community individually, I'm going to start here with the Sawchuk Agroecology Action Plan. So in Sawchuk, you're looking at a picture of their garden right now. And it's this very large garden. There's actually a greenhouse that isn't even in the picture here. And it's a large garden that is used to produce food to share with all of the community members in Sawchuk. It has a dedicated garden coordinator and 2 staff. And so they were pretty well set up to start doing gardening in their community, but they requested help to update their garden action plan as they had outgrown their older one, and they wanted to better align the work in the garden with their Indigenous laws and values. So 3 community leaders and I used the Agroecology in the North framework to develop interview questions to talk with community members about what they want to see in the future for their garden, as well as how to align with their Indigenous laws and cultural practices. Based on the feedback from the interviews, we created the action plan, and it's now being used in the community in Sawchuk by the garden coordinator and staff. And so the relationship continues to grow with SKFN based on the research we have done together, and new questions are starting to emerge. One of the big ones is what to do with all the vegetables that are being produced. They're currently producing more vegetables than community members can eat, and so the question is now, what do we do with all this extra food? And there's also learning how to cook with these new foods, because some of these vegetables are new to community members and they're interested in eating them, but they don't know how to cook with them. So this has been a new challenge that we've been discussing. All right, moving on to Cogitu First Nation. So we worked on a bit of a different challenge with Cogitu First Nation. What you're seeing here on the screen is a picture of a fuel break that's used to protect from wildfire. Wildfires are increasing in size, frequency, and severity due to climate change. And this has impacted Cogitu First Nation significantly. They were evacuated in 2014 as well as 2023 due to wildfires that came close to the town. In this picture, you can actually see some of the burn scars. Anywhere that there are like dead looking trees, those were all burnt in the 2014 burns. And so that's less than a kilometer from the town. So it got very close. And so they put in this fire break to help protect from future fires. And so what you're looking at here, it's about 100 meters wide, and it's cleared everything, all of the trees, all of the vegetation, right down to the soil. And so it's bare ground. But instead of just leaving this land empty, community members are interested in using this land to support their local food system. So in 2023, we held a community workshop to discuss ideas about what to do in the fuel break. And we used participatory exercises that use the agroecology in the North framework, once again, to ensure a holistic conversation about these ideas for the fuel break. From these discussions, there was strong interest in planting traditional berries in part of the fire break close to town. Picking berries is a really important part of the traditional food system in Kikisa, and there was interest in replacing the berry patches close to town that were lost in the 2014 burns. And the other part of this was that the replanting these berries provides an accessible place for people to go picking, especially those with mobility issues like elders, or those that have busy jobs that prevent them from getting out on the land to go berry picking. So in June of this year, I traveled up to Kikisa to train 2 community members how to transplant berries from the forest into the fuel break. We're really excited to see how these plants look in the spring after the long cold winter up north, and we'll be continuing to support this project for probably many years to come. So I'd like to say thank you for your time and listening to these projects, and thank you to those that have supported this work. I hope this helped to paint a picture of how long-term relationships that use collaborative participatory action research can support communities in climate change adaptation. And I look forward to your questions. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Carla. That's a wonderful presentation and a great experience that you're sharing today with our Laurier community. As we mentioned at the top, we have about 45 people on the line right now. Welcome as many questions as possible for either Suma or Carla and Dana. We're prepping Dana's presentation now, so Dana, please feel to begin.
All right. Okay, well, thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Eric. I'm really happy to be part of this panel and to hear about the really interesting work that both Suma and Carla are doing. My name is Dana Sawchuk. I am a professor of sociology here at Laurier. I'm also the secretary of the Climate Action Committee, which is sort of the voice of the Wilfrid Laurier University Faculty Association on climate issues. And so today I'd like to say a few words about this climate knowledge and action survey of first-year students that I've been working on for a little over a year now with my colleague, Professor Deborah Van Nijneten, in the Department of Political Science and North American Studies. But I also want to show how, and kind of in keeping with the theme of this panel, how this has truly been sort of a collaborative effort among many different people and units and groups across Laurier. Before I get into that style of collaboration and talking about the types of questions on the survey, I just kind of wanted to do a little quick, who, what, when, where, why overview of the survey. In terms of sort of who is involved in the survey in a narrow sense and why we decided to do the survey, one of the groups that has been a spin-off of the Climate Action Committee is a group called the Climate Pedagogy Community of Practice here at Laurier. And we're a group of faculty, librarians, and staff who meet regularly to discuss not only the study, but also the practice of incorporating, climate change knowledge and student engagement on climate action into our teaching. And so, when we first started meeting last year, very early on, we kind of realized that we were putting the cart before the horse, right? Because we were all excited about how we were going to incorporate, climate knowledge into our classes and engage students in climate action. But we realized that we actually didn't have a comprehensive overview of what our students knew about climate change in the first place. And particularly, we didn't really know, what was going on in the high schools, for example, in terms of climate education and what students, coming to Laurier had as a background in terms of climate issues. So it was kind of, realizing that shortcoming in our knowledge where this idea for the survey started to percolate in the community of practice. And we ended up deciding to survey first-year students at Laurier. These would be students who graduated from high school within the past 2 years and who had no other post-secondary background, right? We really wanted to get students almost straight from high school so that they had no real educational or long-term work experience kind of intervening between their high school and their university experience. In terms of what the survey is done on the Qualtrics survey platform, it takes students about 10 minutes to complete. And if they complete the survey, they can choose to be entered in a draw to win a e-scooter. We are rolling out the survey right now. We started at the beginning of October, and we hope to finish by the end of this academic term, so in the next 5-6 weeks or so. And in terms of where, we are rolling out the survey across Laurier, all its campuses. So not only the Waterloo campus and the Brantford campus, but also our new campus at Meliton, because these are the campuses that have first-year students. So when it comes to kind of the collaboration involved, there are various steps that we kind of went through. As I said, so originally, the Climate Pedagogy Community of Practice was kind of like a spin-off from the Climate Action Committee, right? It's sort of a separate entity, but there are some members in common between these two groups. In terms of sort of administrative support, running the meetings, we received the sort of coordination help from the Teaching Excellence and Innovation Unit here at Laurier. And kind of individual members in all these three groups were really instrumental in helping us formulate the questions for the survey, reading drafts of the survey, brainstorming about, how we were going to roll out the survey in terms of sort of logistics and sort of our multi-campus reality at Laurier. Oops. But, there are faculty members in those first three groups, but then there are other faculty members from Laurier that also gave us a hand during this process. So there is a faculty member in the Department of Political Science who has expertise in surveys and statistics, and he helped us with survey design. And then there were also the faculty members from across Laurier who were kind enough to advertise the survey to their students and circulate the link to the survey to their students, and often giving them class time to complete the survey during their classes. We had a couple of work study students help us with the survey. So one's a student who knows far more about Qualtrics than I do, helped us enter the questions into Qualtrics. And then we had another work studies student read through the questions in the survey with an eye to seeing sort of how comprehensible they were from the student point of view. And this student is also helping us right now with recruitment. I'd also like to acknowledge the participation and the support of the Sustainability Office in this endeavor. So they were the ones who donated the e-scooter for the draw. They also provided some funding for extending the work term of one of the work study students. But also, right, the staff in that office have experience with these types of surveys. So they were able to not only bring their sustainability knowledge into reviewing the survey content, but also their knowledge of, the processes of how surveys work at Laurier, or what institutional approvals we needed in terms of ethics clearance at Laurier. We work with students to pilot the survey. So last spring, we piloted the survey in a large first-year class. And these students helped us not only by taking the survey and making sure the mechanics of the survey worked, but we also had a sort of a very large sort of informal focus group type discussion with them, where they gave us some feedback about their impressions of the survey and how we could improve it. And then finally, there are other people and groups on campus who've also played a role in the development and the dissemination of this survey. So just to give 2 examples, the Student Union is helping us to advertise the survey, and the Residence Life coordinators are helping to advertise the survey amongst the first-year students living in residence. All right, so you can kind of get this sense that there are many different people from many different parts of the university that gave of their time and expertise to help make this survey happen. I guess the last thing I'd like to do is just talk about the 4 survey sections, 4 substantive survey sections, and give you an idea of some of the questions that we've been asking of the students. So the first section asks students to really sort of assess their own state of climate knowledge and how concerned they are about climate change. So, for example, we asked them questions about how confident they were that their sort of K-12 education, equipped them to understand climate change and its consequences. We asked them about how worried they are about climate change and whether such worries impact their ability to study or, go about their daily lives. Part of the survey involves a 10-question climate knowledge quiz for the students to complete. And these are just, questions about the causes of climate change or the characteristics of climate change. And then when they go through the survey questions, when they're finished, they have a chance to see the correct answers if they would like. We have some questions about where they get their information on climate change. So their information sources, is it the library? Is it social media? Is it Google? And so we also ask them how trustworthy they find various sources of information about climate change like that. And then finally, the last section of the survey really tries to gauge students' sense of efficacy in terms of climate action and advocacy. Trying to get their opinions on, whether individuals and groups can make a difference in relation to addressing climate change, or whether they would be interested in, joining an activist group or researching climate policies. And then the survey itself ends, as I said, with that opportunity to enter a draw to win the e-scooter, but then all students get redirected to the page for Ellisburg, which is the Laurier Students Public Interest Research Group. And they have a student action committee on climate justice. So, as they leave the survey, students can elect to get on to a mailing list to be informed about and invited to participate in certain climate events on campus. So that's basically an overview of the survey. I'm happy to answer any questions people might have. As I said, the survey is ongoing, so data collection is ongoing, but our plan is to eventually publish the results, not only for the Laurier community, but also external to the Laurier community as well, for other people working in post-secondary education. That's it for me.
Thanks, Dana. So we actually ended right on time, giving ourselves a solid 15 to 20 minutes to ask questions. A couple have come through. We have a couple of general questions as well. I'm going to start with the first one that we received, and I know our panelists are screening, sorry, reviewing questions as they come through, and I'll make sure we ask all the ones that we receive. Um, so the first one is actually directed towards Suma. There was an attendee who wanted to know if we know how the archive's carbon footprint compares to a library without a special collection.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. It basically just depends on the parameters that you'd like to use. So in our case, our library has an archives and special collections as a shared space. There is one room that is just archives, in which case you can use the square footage from that space, as well as if you have any knowledge of mechanical equipment available in that space, that can help you determine in the larger library portfolio what your square footage would be, and that can help you determine the carbon footprint.
If I can add to that, we're definitely interested in learning that from the other institutions participating in this pilot. All of the other schools that we've recruited do have special collections, but there are a few that don't. So that might actually be a way to compare baselines. The next question we have is actually directed to Professor Sawchuk. How important do you believe data collection from these surveys and other forms is in creating meaningful and impactful educational programs for the university regarding climate action?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, I have to say that I am actually a qualitative researcher. So I have never in my own sort of research history administered or designed a survey before. I tend to do one-on-one interviews or at most focus groups with people. But I will say that, as we've been discussing in the climate pedagogy community of practice, we at Laurier not only, don't know what students are coming into Laurier with in terms of climate knowledge background, but we also don't know what's happening sort of among our colleagues in terms of what they are teaching about climate change. And so we thought that this type of survey, which hopefully we can follow up with a survey of what faculty members are doing, would kind of help us sort of break down those silos between departments and help us sort of start to address how we can build a more sort of comprehensive and coordinated climate change curriculum at Laurier, right? Not just one that's like restricted to, the Department of Environmental Studies, but one that incorporates people from all different faculties at Laurier. And I think, starting with data and from all these different areas of the university is a way to sort of help provoke that conversation and start to make our case.
Great. Thanks, Dana. The next question is for Carla, and I think there is actually two for Carla, so we'll start with the first one. Carla, how could we best encourage sustainable food systems on campus? In your opinion, what methods would be most effective in raising awareness about locally sourced and sustainable food among the student body?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Actually, way back in my undergrad days at Trent University, there's this movement from students to have more locally sourced food on our campus, and there was a lot of political advocacy that was done for the food provider that provided food on campus to have more local food. So I think that that's also something that can happen on most campuses. So really like finding that place where you can have your voice to advocate for different food procurement is a great way to do those things. As well as like you can broaden outside of campus. Like Waterloo has so much local food available to students, and probably in Brantford and in Meliton as well. So things like finding how to locally source food that you're bringing into your own home so that you can eat that when you go to campus is a good way to think about these things. So both the institutional side, but also kind of what you're doing on an individual basis or a family basis.
Great. And then the next question for you, Carla, there's a comment and then a question. The person attending mentioned the comment that it's such important work that you're doing. They were wondering if other forms of growing, such as hydroponics, were considered, if greenhouses will be implemented to extend the growing seasons, and whether canning or freeze drying could be used to prolong produce viability.
Yeah, definitely. So all of these things have kind of been discussed and talked about with these two communities. In terms of the hydroponics, this is something that both communities has decided not to pursue, mostly because the inputs that you need to put into it are quite expensive, and that the whole system is quite expensive. And they're really interested in learning how to use their own land to continue to sustain themselves. So all of those kind of external inputs for hydroponics was a bit of a deterrent for both communities. But both communities actually do have greenhouses. So they have just a standard, hoop house greenhouse for both of them. And they do really extend the season. They make a big difference. And then, yeah, things like canning and preserving, those are all somewhat new kind of practices that some community members know how to do, some of them want to learn, that sort of thing. And so it's kind of in this continued process of learning and sharing how to do those sorts of practices.
Very good. Thanks, Carla. So you got back to back. I'm trying to keep the answering equitable. So the next question is actually going to be asked to Suma and to Professor Sawchuk. So Suma, what is the most surprising thing you've learned from your collaborations, and how has that knowledge impacted your work and your approach?
I think one of the most surprising things is that we're all on the same team, and the amount of people that are actually willing to share knowledge and to learn from others as well. And it's just because we're all siloed in different departments, we don't get as much knowledge sharing as I'd like. And so when we started reaching out to different people to participate in this pilot study, it was interesting to see how much buy-in there was and how much stakeholder interest. And so part of my role is not only to do the data analytics side, but it's also to embrace that behavioral change on campus and just to encourage that connection and that collaboration piece.
Fantastic. I guess Professor Sawchuk, is the same question for you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I kind of agree with Suma. Like I was just, it was so pleasantly eye-opening to see how willing people were to, I mean, we're all busy, right? But just to give of their time and to take such care with reading through drafts or, looking at the mechanics of the Qualtrics survey to try and help us. I'll also say that I've been really impressed with the student involvement in the survey. Not only our work study students, but also the students who had piloted the project. How, when we went into the class, Deborah and I went into the class to pilot the project, we effectively had a captive audience. They weren't doing this for grades. They just took the survey, and they had such great insights into how the survey could be improved and what their impressions were. And it was kind of heartening to see that just the good faith that people had put into this project. And it made us kind of happy that we could provide this outlet for people to collaborate in this way, because as a researcher personally, I kind of, write by myself or maybe with one other partner. So this type of pan-institutional leveraging of knowledge and goodwill is new to me, but also very very gratifying.
Very good. It's super refreshing. I agree with you on that context. The next question is directed to Carla. Carla, the attendee wanted to know if you'd be willing to share a bit about how the community level work you described connects with the global governance scale that is the other part of your dissertation work.
Yes, for sure. And I know the person that asked it. Hi, Alex. Yeah, happy to share some of that. So the big part of the work that I did in Kikisa and Samba K, it was really connecting with these kind of global frameworks for agroecology that had been going through a policy process at the UN. And it was almost like it was coincidental when we were working on these discussions with these communities. At the same time, these policy processes were happening at the UN level. And so the knowledge and the different groups that were coming together at that global level to talk about agroecology were starting to create all of this knowledge And all of these reports and a lot of those materials were able to be used when talking with the community members at the local level. But there was also this aspect of solidarity with all of these other groups around the world that are keen on agroecology, kind of bringing that together there. And so it was these kind of connections. I will also say that there's actually a lot of disconnections between the local level and the global governance work. That has also been an important part of my dissertation, is recognizing the various disconnections as well. But for the positive side, the connections were kind of this knowledge sharing and solidarity with these global movements.
I guess the next question is actually going to come from my list here. It's a question directed towards Suma. Suma, how does, Laurier has set ambitious carbon reductions goals. Could you please elaborate on any recent successes in the area that you've been involved in and how they may impact the overall targets that we're trying to pursue?
So at Laurier, we have been committed to our goals. We had intended to reach net zero campuses by 2040. One of the notable achievements that I have listed was a major retrofit in the lighting systems, transitioning to energy efficient LED lighting throughout all campuses. This change alone has had significant reductions of carbon dioxide emissions annually, and it aligns closely with our sustainability targets. We've also expanded our renewable energy initiative, incorporating solar panels into infrastructure, which not only contributes to energy supply, but also serves as a tangible commitment to sustainability for all staff and students. The impacts of these initiatives extend beyond just carbon reduction. They've allowed a stronger culture of sustainability on campus, increased awareness and engagement from the community, and have led to greater participation of our programs, enhanced our overall impact. We will continue to advance our carbon reduction strategies. These successes provide a solid foundation, and that's what motivates us to pursue even more innovative solutions for our collective sustainable future.
Suma. The next question is actually directed back to Professor Sawchuk. Dana, from our side, sorry, I just blocked the screen here. What has been the most surprising findings from the survey so far, and how do you think these insights can shape Laurier's climate action initiatives?
Yeah, so I will say that we are still collecting data and, haven't done a full analysis of the data. So, I wouldn't want to make any sort of firm conclusions, but I will note that there, many of the students that we've surveyed so far, a large majority of them have indicated that they are somewhat or very confident with how their K-12 schooling has prepared them in terms of climate change knowledge. And then so when we compare that level of confidence with some of the answers on the climate knowledge quiz, the answers don't bear out that confidence. Some of the answers were, surprisingly low, the number of correct answers in some ways. And so there seems to be maybe a disconnect of, oh yeah, we hear so much about the climate in high school, and then maybe not necessarily retaining that knowledge or fully understanding that knowledge moving forward. But I think, again, and this kind of goes back to the earlier question about the worth of survey data. I mean, I think this can kind of be used to help us map out where we're starting from in our classes and where we're starting from with our students, right? If Laurier has an institutional commitment to sustainability, we kind of have to know what the starting point is before we start working towards those objectives. And so it might be disheartening to see some of the results of the survey, but the survey has also shown us, at least so far, that students want Laurier to play that role in their education. Like, they want the climate knowledge in the curriculum. They want hands-on opportunities to get involved in learning about the climate. And so, again, I think it's the data that can be the foundation for sort of building the programs that can address not only those deficiencies, but also those aspirations amongst our students.
Perfect. I'm going to try to squeeze in one more. I know we're at 4 minutes left. I want to give Amanda time to close out. But to each of you, starting with Suma, going to Carla, then Professor Sawchuk, and possibly Amanda, what advice would you give to students and young professionals who are passionate about climate action, but want to pursue careers focused on sustainability and resilience?
I think it's important to embrace the interest and implement some energy saving practices in your own daily operations, whether it's at home or in the workplace or on campus. You can join community engagement opportunities like this event and encourage conversations about sustainability within your network. And I think that's what sparks an interest. Also, you can continue to support policy advocacy, like stay informed within your local and national policies related to climate action.
Great. Yeah, my answer to this is find where you see hope in creating a more sustainable world and follow that. Because hope is a really excellent motivator. And oftentimes, when you think about climate change, it can be overwhelming and anxiety inducing. And so, hope can kind of help to counteract that. And it also helps you be more passionate about things. So, yeah, find where you see hope in creating a more sustainable world.
Fantastic. Dana.
Yeah, I guess I would say that, if you're passionate about climate action, don't just restrict your career search to careers focused specifically on the climate, right? All jobs can be climate jobs. So I guess my advice would be to find the place that you can, implement climate change and climate activism no matter what you do. And sort of keep that going, even if you don't get the job in the sector.
And I'm going to pass it back to you, Amanda, if you wanted to answer that just briefly, and then feel free to close out for us. Thank you.
Sure. I think I would just echo Dana's comments. When I started my career as an archivist, I didn't anticipate how often I would think about climate change and climate action. And so I do think that every job is a climate job. And if you are interested, I think whatever kind of career path you follow can be climate action and climate change can be a part of that career path. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much to Suma, Carla, Dana, and Eric for all of your work putting together this wonderful panel. And I'd also like to thank everyone for attending today and asking their wonderful questions. This has been a really great experience, and thank you so much for participating.